Welcome to my new video on building a website with a constant aspect ratio. And this is what I'm going to build. You'll notice everything shrinks and grows according to the size of the window. And you'll see it has a constant ratio for the header and footer, and it's got some content in between. So this is how most websites are built, with a header and footer and stuff in between. So this is different from most websites out there, like this one. It just stays the same size, and there's some breakpoints in there where things do change, but it doesn't maintain its aspect ratio. It just has some code in there saying, okay, when the screen size is this size, then make this that size, but it doesn't just shrink down. It's much more complicated as well. Here's my starting code. You can download this code. I've put it on my GitHub here, so you just go, there's a link in the description. You just go here, starting code, and then click on whichever one you want, and you can copy and paste it into your own Visual Studio Code. And Visual Studio Code also has something called extensions. So you click on here for extensions, and I have the 5 server installed, this one here. So you just click on it, click install, and what this does is I can right click on my HTML file, choose open with 5 server. And what this does is whenever you make changes, you don't have to hit the refresh button. It just does it as soon as you save any file in here, it'll refresh it automatically. So it just saves you having to press a button. So this is my starting code. This is what it looks like, just kind of bare bones, boring. When you make it shrink and grow, it doesn't change. You'll see I have 2 CSS files here. One is a reset.css. This one I get from meyerweb.com. I've also put this link in the description. Grab a copy of the code, and all I did was I just copied this and pasted it into this reset.css file. And what it does, see, I'll just take it out to show you. Wait, did I save it? No, I didn't do it. So it automatically updated it. So you'll see it's got all these built-in, CSS already. So let's put that back in. So now it just takes out all the default formatting, and that's just really nice to work with. And also, I've put everything into a CSS folder. I have four files to start off with. I've put everything into a CSS folder. It's just kind of conventional when your website gets bigger to kind of organize things better. And then I've had to put this CSS / and then that will connect it. And if you look at this one, I've just got the colors in there. You can see the 4 divs with the different colors and the kitty cat in there. And you'll notice I have this dot div, and that refers to the class. If you just want to refer to a div, you just go div. But if you want to refer to the class name, then you do the dot div. You can also use something called IDs. So div ID equals div2, and then you'd use a hashtag instead of a dot. Most people use classes, and this is very common. There is a relatively new CSS system called Grid, and there's an older one called Flexbox, and that one's still used quite often. But I like Grid. you set up a series of rows and columns, and you tell CSS exactly where you want them. And I think, most web pages nowadays use a combination of both grid and Flexbox. But this one I'm going to focus on the grid system. So if you see here, we have a div class container. So the first thing I'm going to do to set up this grid is .container display grid. Save it. It doesn't do anything yet, even though it says CSS updated. So we're going to, first of all, we're going to design the columns, and then we're going to design the rows. So we're going to want, maybe I should open that up again. And this as well is online. I've got the link in the description. So we're going to see here, overall, we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4 columns. And these two are going to span those 4 columns. So we have to set it up with the maximum number of columns and then tell the other ones how many columns to span. So to set up the 4 columns, we'll go grid template columns, and then 1 FR, 2 FR, 2 FR, 1 FR. And the number of entries you have here is the number of columns. And FR means fraction. So the first column is going to be 1 fraction of the total. Then the second 2 are going to be 2 fractions, and the last one 1 fraction. So save. There we go. So these 2 middle columns are twice as big as the end columns. So, it's starting to take shape. I'm just going to add a border around the second column here. Pixel solid red, just so you can see that a bit clearer. For this first column, we're going to set it span to 4. So that we say that grid column span 4. Save. There we go. So now we have the header spanning the whole width of the screen. But now that's shoved this one just right next to the end of the last one. So we have to move this one over. Div 1 has to go over. So div 1, we set this a little bit differently. Go grid column. And what you do is you specify the starting edge and the finishing edge. So we're going to want it starting up at column 2 and ending at column 3. Save that. There we go. Now those 2 are in position. But still the footer is off. We don't have to change div 2, but we set the footer the same as the header. So we go grid column and 4. Save. All right. There we go. So now we have all of the columns specified properly. Now we have to work on the rows. The rows are weird. All right, I'll take this border out just because better. So to set the rows, we're going to set, we first of all have to specify, we have to use, again, there's 4 columns, 3 rows. So grid template rows. And here we set the heights. So the first one, now in order to get everything to have a constant aspect ratio, we have to specify it. We've used fractions here. We have to specify it relative to something else. So we're going to do 5 vertical height. So vertical height means the height of the viewed window here, from like here to here. So the header, we're going to set to 5% basically of the vertical height. Works really well to set the middle row to auto, and then the last row we're going to make that a bit bigger than the header, 8 vertical height. Save. There we go. So now we have the header and the footer done. We've set this to auto for a reason. What we're going to do is set the min height of the whole thing to 100 times the vertical height, 100% of the vertical height. what this will do is this will stretch this one out because it's the only one that's auto. There we go. So it's perfectly 100% of the window height. And as you can see, we've got this aspect ratio working. So all of the columns and rows are working as we want. And then as we go up higher, the footer disappears as the content shows, and that's exactly what we want for regular websites. However, we don't have the text changing yet and this kitty cat changing, so let's change those as well. So let's work on the text first. So we'll just go to the container to catch everything. Font size, and again we want to set it in terms of the vertical width, or something that's relative to the width of the window. Save it. Aha, everything's bigger. And as we shrink the window down, the text gets smaller. So it grows and shrinks with the window size. And finally, we want to work on that kitty cat. So we want to make sure that we can do it with images as well. So the kitty cat's in div 2, so I'll just do it below that image. And again, we don't need that dot because if you look at the text, you just have, there's no class here, so we can just, it's basically calling all images. So if there's more than one image, you're going to want a class, but here we only have one image, so I'm just going to use the simplest for this example. And then width, again, in terms of VW, the vertical width of the window, let's say 28 VW, just because I know that works well. Save it, and now the image also is relative to the window size. And that is it. Everything. This took me like weeks to figure out, I would say. Lots of playing with it, lots of figuring it out. But in the end, I think the code's very simple and it works. So there you go. Constant aspect ratio website. Thanks for watching.